Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have two very special guests. One is somebody who I talked to back on April of 2019 about her excellent true crime book titled Free to Kill, about the serial killer Larry Eyler. Her name is Gera-Lind Kolarik. And I just interviewed one of her friends, Andy Schwartz, about her new book about Jeffrey Dahmer. And this book, it was originally published in 1992, currently has 66 five-star reviews on Amazon in the US. And this is not Gera-Lind's first book. She's also published I Am Cain and also Prisoners of Fear. And she has an update, and that's why we brought on coroner Scott McCord to kind of give us an update on stuff that has happened very recently. So welcome to the show, both Gera-Lind and Scott. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Bill. I really thank you for having me on here. This is a book that never ends. I mean, the updates on it, usually you write a book and the book comes out and that's it, the end of the story, killer's caught, killer dies or something like that. But Free to Kill is an ongoing story. What makes it very remarkable is that we have a couple of unidentified bodies out there. And Larry Eyler was a homosexual serial killer. So he was gay himself, and he would go out and he would look for other gay men or other men that he suspected may be gay, drug them, and then take them out to rural areas and kill them, knife them to death, and sexually molest them and have them try to perform type of sexual acts on him, and then he would kill them. And a lot of the young men were male prostitutes or drifters or hitchhikers, unknowns in the world. And we have, I got a phone call in 2009 from a man named Scott McCord, who is a Newton County coroner. And he said to me that you've written a book, Free to Kill. And I remember this is many years ago. Free to Kill first came out in 1990 and 1992. And Eyler died in 1994. And when Eyler died, he confessed to all the murders in the book. But there were bodies still unidentified. And what Scott did was he used the forensics and DNA of today's world and the forensics of today's world to identify bodies that were there from 1983. And first, the story of Free to Kill is a story that I helped break with when I was with Channel 7 Eyewitness News. I was the assignment editor. And on the desk, part of my assignments I would do beat checks. I'm an old-time journalist. And I would call coroner's offices and I would say, any new cases, anything new? And in 1982, I was calling my coroner up in Kankakee in Illinois. And he says, we got this unusual body that we found. And I said, what do you mean unusual body? He says, it's a young man with multiple stab wounds, about 30 stab wounds. And the pants are partially pulled down, pulled across the field, no identification, maybe drug related. But I don't know, there's something strange about this. And so they had no identity or anything. So I kept the notes on it. And then when I was doing another beat check, he says, it came up. We know the name of this guy. And he says, male prostitute out of Chicago. And then all of a sudden I saw bodies coming up in Indiana. A few months later, there was a young man that came up unidentified. And another one came up, a male prostitute from Chicago. And I thought, my God, this is kind of unusual. It's like somebody's picking up these young men from Chicago and killing them. And if they're gay, maybe it's somebody that it's homophobic and is killing these guys. A lot of rage. And all of a sudden I found out that there was a task force looking at as many as 20 murders in Indiana. And then on October 16th, 1983, there were 4 unidentified bodies found in Newton County. Channel 7 really wasn't too eager to do a story about a homosexual serial killer. They said, Jer, we got to have somebody tell us more about this and everything. I mean, we can't just go with a story like this. And I was collecting video from my TV stations, Wish Station in Indianapolis and things like that. And we had 3 murders up in Lake County, Illinois, of young men that were found, multiple stab wounds. And on August 21st, 1982, we found a body of a young man named Ralph Calise. And we knew it was Ralph Calise because we found his ID, multiple stab wounds. And I knew that there was a task force in Indianapolis. So I know the sheriff, Mickey Babcock, and I called him and I says, Mickey, I think this is a serial killer that has been operating out of Illinois and Indiana. Maybe it got too hot for him in Indiana. So that's why he's going up towards Wisconsin with his bodies in Lake County. And he said, Jer, you stick to your job as a reporter. I'll stick to my job as a cop. And I said, well, here's the phone number of the task force. And he called me that night and he said, Agatha Christie, you have one heck of a story. And that's what happened with Eyler. And Eyler was arrested for the Ralph Calise murder when an Indiana police officer saw 2 men coming out of a ditch up there in Lowell, Indiana. He ran the license and saw that this is a man who's a suspect in a number of serial killings. So he handcuffed him, brought him in, seized the pickup truck, found a knife in it, found boots that had blood on them, but he violated his constitutional rights. So all the evidence on the Ralph Calise case was impounded and suppressed, and they could not charge him with the Ralph Calise murder, even though he was a suspect in 23 murders. They had to set him free, and he was freed to kill. That's where he got the name from Mickey Babcock, looking at me and saying he's free to kill. It's a matter of time before he kills again. And then what happened was that in 19, I'm getting all these years mixed up. In 1986, on August 21st, a body of a young man is found in Chicago, Danny Bridges, cut up in various pieces and put into a dumpster behind a Rogers apartment. Larry Eyler is arrested and charged with the murder of Danny Bridges and sentenced to life in jail. And sentenced not to life in jail, sentenced to death. So his attorney wanted to try to get him out of death row when Free to Kill came out and said that there was an accomplice, a professor from Indiana State University, Professor Dr. Robert Little, who was always around Eyler and helped him in killing these young men. And he was a gay man from the head of the Department of Library Science. So Eyler named him as an accomplice and confessed to a murder where I brought out a lot of evidence in Indiana and Stephen Agan. And what happened was that Eyler testified in court and named this professor, and all of a sudden, Free to Kill, a little book, hardcover book that came out in Chicago, became a nationwide bestseller because it was on Nightline, I was on Newsweek, we were in all of the stations, Entertainment Tonight, everybody. And then Avon walked in and released a paperback copy of Free to Kill with the updates about Eyler's confessions and everything. And the book sold over 500,000 books. Not bad for your first book. And sold also in Europe and France and Italy and in Spanish and in German. So that's the story of Free to Kill. And then when Eyler died in 1994, he confessed to all the murders in Free to Kill. But he didn't know the names of some of the victims. And that's where people like Scott McCord, who I'm going to turn this over, continues the story and what he did, but using modern forensics today. Scott.
Hi, Gera-Lind. Thanks, Bill, for having me on. I'm probably not going to be quite as colorful as Gera-Lind is, but Gera-Lind and I met, well, we've never actually met, but we met by phone back in 2009. And I took office as coroner in 2008. And when I took office, I inherited the skeletal remains of these 2 boys. And they were in bankers' boxes that were labeled with victims 3 and victim 4.
What jurisdiction was that, Scott?
Newton County.
Thank you.
Newton County, Indiana.
Thank you.
I had no clue what these bones went to, nothing except a small piece of paper inside of one of them that had what ended up being a state police case number. And I had called the state police and had them reference it. And they came back with, well, it's a Larry Eyler case. This case is closed. Why are you interested? I said, because I have the skeletal remains, and which that sparked some interest with them. Throughout some digging, trying to find more information on the case, I stumbled across Freed to Kill and the name Gera-Lind Kolarik. And so it was a cold call to Gera-Lind that really started this whole train rolling from my end. She talked to me for a good hour, probably longer than that. Seems like time kind of passes by the older we get. But she gave me the history of Larry Eyler, and I guess she was kind of a motivating factor in one of the many motivating factors in trying to locate the identity of these boys. They were basically forgotten. I actually had three. I had 2 boys and a girl. The girl was found back in 1988, and we've identified her through DNA. And then it was getting to the point where I was ready to throw my hands up and say, no more. I'm done. In 2019, I reached out to a group called the DNA Doe Project. We'd heard all of this stuff about DNA and how it works, and we've used NamUs and gotten the DNA into their system, and it just kept coming up with nothing. The DNA Doe Project, I shipped them I had the DNA released from University of North Texas, and they ran with it. And literally after they got it, after they had reprocessed the DNA, again, DNA is something that I don't understand a lot about, but they had to reprocess it and uploaded it into GEDmatch, and within a matter of hours, they were calling me saying, we've got a positive ID.
And how did they extract the DNA from these kind of remains? Do you know?
I don't understand how DNA works. I know that I shipped to the University of North Texas. I shipped the lower jaw, and I believe it was a femur from each of the boys to them, and they're the ones that did the extraction.
And was it true? Wasn't there like a burial pit, like the bodies were buried together? Is that correct? Is that correct, Gera-Lind?
Well, except for one, an African American. All the white people were buried together inside the barn. And he was buried outside the barn. And I know from DNA, that's why they needed the bones, because they had to do a chemical analysis in taking something out of the bones to help them with the DNA. I mean, DNA can be determined from a hair sample. Personal toothbrushes, things like that, saliva, and that's why they needed those bones. Even as old as they were, Scott, those bones were what really helped them to chemically do an analysis and break down the DNA. And
so that DNA, I'm sorry, please continue.
Well, we were fortunate with this that the family tree DNA, and I'm using that as a reference, not a name, because there's actually family tree DNA group out there. But we were fortunate that people had uploaded their DNA into like the Ancestry, Ancestry.com, 23andMe. There's so many different agencies out there or companies that do this. The main one that seems to work is GEDmatch. But with the boy I called Brad, I had given him all names early on. I had Adam, Brad, and Charlene, A, B, and C, because I thought if they have names, they're going to be harder to forget about. Put a name to them, they're now a person. And once we made a match on there, I mean, it came back as 100%. There was a lot of times it's a lot of tedious work of narrowing down, first cousin twice removed, and then they work backwards and then work forwards again. This one was very straightforward. I mean, as soon as it was uploaded, it was boom. We know exactly who he is, and he ended up being a young man who was picked up in Chicago, which that was totally off from what I was guessing. But it's a guessing game when you're dealing with unidentifieds. But he was picked up in Chicago. Larry brought him down here, and just like Gera-Lind had said, drugged him and took him to his killing site in Lake Village, which had a barn, when the pictures that were from it that I saw, because I obviously wasn't the coroner back in the 80s, were quite macabre. And he had this was the perfect setting for a serial killer. It was an abandoned farmhouse, and the barn sat several hundred feet off the roadway, so he could pull in there and he could take his time, which is exactly what he did. And he would stab the young men to death, and then take them out and bury them. And he, like Gera-Lind said, he had buried the 3 white boys side by side, and then the black boy, which is Adam, was buried. I think they said it was 40 feet away from the others.
And so once you got the positive match, what happened from there? What happened next?
It was just a matter of reaching out to that family, and we did reach out. We reached out to a sister, and we dealt primarily with the sister, because the mother, who was still alive, and I think that's an important thing to remember, that here this woman was. She's frail. She's in her 80s, and she woke up every morning for 37 and a half years wondering where her son was at. Is he ever going to come home? So my girlfriend and I decided we were going to actually deliver her son to her. So we loaded the skeletal remains up in my car. I had purchased a casket, an infant casket, and we took him down there. And the funeral home down there, obviously we have to coordinate everything with funeral homes. The funeral home down there had basically donated a full-size casket so that nobody would ask questions. And the day we arrived there was the day they were going to do the funeral. So everything looked quote unquote normal. We found the young man and got him home, and it ended up I named him Brad, and ended up his name was John Brandenburg.
John Brandenburg. So the family was able to kind of lay him to rest, correct?
The family was they got some closure. Like Mom said, she woke up every day for 37 and a half years wondering, is Johnny ever going to come home? Those are her words. And his brother, we had the opportunity to meet his brother and his sister. Wonderful people, in a terrible time. It was, even though 37 and a half years had passed, it was like opening a fresh wound, but yet I think, at least I hope, it brought some comfort to him.
And I hope we can one day solve the murder on the other man, the African-American man. Probably the same thing, the young man that was picked up in Chicago, who was disappeared, and his family is wondering what's happening to him. And this story takes a different approach. Let me tell you, Roland Emmerich, as we all know, is a very famous producer, Hollywood producer. He's one of the top 15 producers in Hollywood, and he did Independence Day, he did The Patriot, Midway, and now he's got a new movie coming out. He's a gay producer. He's an openly gay man, and he was looking for a story about a homosexual serial killer. Well, when Free to Kill came out in 1992, we had Paramount Pictures that was interested in it. But the idea of a man as a serial killer of men and killing men, a homosexual serial killer, was often taboo, and nothing ever came of it. But now he is a very big advocate for the gay and lesbian, transgender communities, and he wants to bring this out. And they have bought the option to Free to Kill. They bought it about 2 years ago, and it was supposed to start production in 2020, but because of what would happen with the pandemic, they couldn't come out here to Chicago to look at any sites, and they plan to do taping here in Chicago, and people from Chicago will definitely be there. And we have a police officer, Dan Collin, from the Lake County Sheriff's Office. That's going to be my main character in there. And there's even going to be a woman actress portraying me. I said, make sure she's sexy and young and wears high heels and a dress. That's perfectly me. But she's got to have a trench coat. And so it's going to be interesting, and we're looking forward to this. And they have a script that is being written right as we speak now. And now they're starting to put it together.
No, that's great. Congratulations. Do you know if they have any actors attached to the project?
No, I don't think so yet. They're doing the script, but the script is definitely based on the book.
Awesome.
It's definitely based on Free to Kill. And I told them that I have this update with Scott McCord. So, Scott, I imagine they're going to have some hunky guy to play you as a coroner, talking to me in that phone call. So there you go.
You guys are going to be famous. Hopefully they'll use your real names, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I guess Gera-Lind is such an unusual name. They may use it. Who knows? But I'm happy that someone is interested. It's not just for me or anything like that, or to sell books. It's the idea of bringing to light that men can become victims of serial killers. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Bill, that was the whole purpose of me writing Free to Kill. It was the fact that we had all these young men that died out there. And then when Danny Bridges was killed and everything, there was another young man, David Block, that was discovered afterwards. And I was told at Channel 7, just let it go, Jer. They got him on Bridges. And I remember saying, you know, we have 23 young men out there whose families don't know what happened to their sons. They know that they were killed, but they don't know the story. They need closure. Someone has to tell the story of these young men. And I was very lucky that I had two mothers. I had Ralph Kalisa's mother working with me, and I had Danny Scott McNeve's mother working with me, because they wanted closure. They wanted people to know that their sons were not male hookers, that their sons were guys that were hitchhikers or down on hard luck selling drugs or whatever, but were picked up and then killed. And it was good to bring closure. And Kathleen Zellner, we all know her from the Wisconsin case. I forgot the name of that.
Making a Murder?
Making of a Murder, right. I mean, she became famous because of Free to Kill, because when the book came out, she contacted me and wanted to meet with me in private. And I'll be honest, the cops had me wired when I met with her. Yeah. Because it was like, why would the lawyer of a serial killer want to meet privately with me? She was interested in all the stuff that I had gathered, because remember, these are all open murders. And it would take her forever and ever, and she didn't have the subpoena power. And as a news person, I had police reports. I had everything. I had interviews that would help her in getting information on the murders that she could try to get an accomplice. She wanted to show that Dr. Little was an accomplice in at least 3 or 4 murders, and he was an accomplice in the Danny Bridges murder. And if she could prove that, then he'd get his death sentence overturned. See, so there was a motive to that. And it was interesting. I met with Kathleen Zellner in a bank building in an office in downtown Chicago, and I was wired. And we had, the police says, if you don't come out, we're going to come in after you, and
wow, that's incredible.
It was really interesting. It was a nice meeting. I got a free cup of coffee out of it, but I really didn't trust her, and she didn't trust me. So we played a game of cat and mouse, and but she really wanted to get him off of death row, and that's why he confessed to that murder. And then when Eyler died of AIDS in 1994, all the TV stations came wanting to do an update, and I said, I know that she had him do all these confessions that she wanted to bring forth to name an accomplice. So now her attorney-client privilege is broken. she doesn't have to worry anymore. He's dead. She should do the right thing and hold a news conference and clear the murders. And that's exactly what Kathleen Zellner did.
So she did that. And was Little ever conclusively implicated in the murder?
Little was found not guilty in the Stephen Egan case, and he was set free. And there were no other cases against him. Only the ones that Kathleen Zellner and Eyler claims that he was an accomplice in.
And
so we don't know whatever happened to Dr. Little, but he was let go from the university, and I imagine his whole life was topsy-turvy from that moment on. I think he died. I remember looking him up about a year ago, and I found an obituary.
And this was at the height of the AIDS kind of epidemic too, right? The late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. So what are the kind of effects? I mean, did you ever follow up with a lot of the families? I mean, how did they, at that time, there really probably wasn't the internet for them to get together or kind of.
A lot of the families got together at the news conference that Kathleen Zellner had because she invited the families there. And it was closure for them. And I even did, Wilma McNeve and Carmen Pauly even went with me on talk shows. We went to New York on the Maury Povich show. Maury Povich was different back then. They didn't throw chairs at each other. And the Phil Donahue show and things like that. And we got to meet some of the families, but it was hard on them because, these were families, often very poor families. Sons were on the street. And it was very sad for them. And, it showed that their sons could become victims of a serial killer. And it's how they died is what bothered a lot of the families.
Yeah, pretty macabre, just like Scott said. Very, very sad stories. And do you think, how has that perception changed from back then to the present? Do you think just because the culture has changed, this is more acceptable to talk about, or what?
Well, when Free to Kill came out, one of the big things that I insisted that Avon, when it came out paperback, is that when I go to every time, and I went on a 4-month book tour. All over the United States. And I tell you, everybody, you think it's great being an author, poppycock. Forget it. It's just very, very grueling. But I insisted wherever we go that we meet with the gay newspaper and that we have a community meeting with the local police department and the gay community on men as victims of serial killers. And it really opened up the eyes of a lot of police officers to really take a look at men that are missing. If it was a woman that disappeared and you had women prostitutes, forget it. He never would have been set free. There would have been protests up and down. But because they were gay men, then there were people who did not care. So today it's very important. They treat a missing person like a missing person. They don't care what your race, religion, or your sexual preference is. A person is a person. So yes, things have changed.
Things have changed
immensely in the perception of men as being victims of serial killers. The only serial killer back when Free to Kill came out was we had John Wayne Gacy, but then again, all the bodies were found underneath a house. Then you had Dahmer. They were all found in one location.
Your book was supposedly at Dahmer's place too, right? Wasn't he reading?
Yes, I remember when I got a phone call from the Milwaukee police and saying that they found a copy of Free to Kill underlined. This is a hard copy, underlined in his room. And I said, what did he underline? The part where you put in there how he took Placidil and he drugged the beers and gave it to the victims. From that moment on, I realized whatever true crime books I'm not going to give you a recipe on how to drug and kill somebody. And that really scared me. And they wanted me to look at pictures of Dahmer and everything to see if I recognize any of the victims from the Eyler thing. And I was brought down to Milwaukee. I came down to Milwaukee, met with the police, and there was no connection at all. But the fact that they showed me the copy of Free to Kill, it just scared me as an author completely.
It's crazy. And there still are some gays here. There was a guy, MacArthur, in Toronto who got caught. He was a gay predator. So there's definitely, and Kraft in LA. So that's definitely a subset of these serial killers, is the kind of gay motivated serial killer. Looking back, I guess things have changed in the culture, but would you have any kind of views of how you would change things or do things differently, maybe?
Now, you mean now,
Yeah,
or
just looking back.
looking back?
It's been like 30.
Looking back, the police should have definitely said, okay, these young men are missing. We should take a look what's similar. I mean, a coroner is what really put together the crime pattern by the way they were stabbed and other sexual things, and examining their bodies, and realized that perhaps they were sodomized and things like that, and saw something that was, very similar. I mean, if it wasn't for the gay newspaper in Chicago, a couple of the bodies would not have been identified, because the coroner said they're unidentified. Can your court artist do a sketch? And I remember I sent Andy Austin down there, and she sketched the bodies, the faces with their eyes open. And they put them in the gay newspaper in Chicago, the Windy City Times. And over the weekend, 3 bodies were identified as from Chicago. I mean, the fact that the police it wasn't even mentioned in there, but because Bill Williams, I contacted him with my theory that it's a gay serial killer, he believed in me. And he ran those pictures, the photograph, the artist sketches, and it just came so strange that it was 3 men. But still, the station wasn't going to go for it because it was gay men. Or if they were women, it would have been a completely different story.
Totally different.
Things have changed, yes.
And did you? I mean, it's what's odd too. The FBI didn't get involved in this case at all. It was a state case. Is that correct, or did the FBI?
Yes, that is completely correct. That is completely correct. They didn't have ways back in 1983 and 84 and 86. One state with Indiana, am I right, Scott? One state like Indiana had their murders. Illinois had theirs. Kankakee had theirs, and Kankakee.
Nobody wanted to work together. That was I think that was one of the biggest problems.
But now with the computers and with the they can get things done, and then the DNA and crime scene analysis. Bill, they got the crime scene stuff from Lowell, Indiana, by rolling the tires on butcher block paper with ink on the tires. Hello. The boot prints, I don't know if they still do this, Scott, but on Daniel Scott, on Ralph Calise, they poured plaster into the footprints, and they had the plaster prints. Because when the book came out, the cops gave me a copy of the plaster print. They gave me the plaster print for my wall that I have in my apartment. And I was like, oh my gosh. Now it's just so, they do it with lasers and everything, and it's phenomenal. And things have changed with the crime scene analysis, and that helps a great deal for getting evidence. And that's what we need.
Right. And Scott's a perfect example of this updating computerized forensic systems where certain things that could be solved that really weren't solved back then. And I think you said that Eyler was smart because he was deliberately crossing jurisdictional lines, right?
Yeah, it was. I don't think he really I went to the FBI Academy on serial killers. Okay, Quantico. I did go to a conference on that. And I learned that there were 3 types. There's the organized and just 2 types: organized and disorganized serial killer. And he's a disorganized serial killer. So he gets a rage inside of him, a rage and a desire to commit something and to do something with someone. And he was very much into S&M, into handcuffing and drugging the victim. And he would live out in his mind. He would just travel for hours with a victim. And then he would wake them up in a deserted area and then kill them. And then he would not dig a grave or anything. He would throw the body out in the woods and let the animals take care of it. Just cover it up with leaves and branches and whatever is in the garbage area, and allow that to be itself. But he would always take all identification. And to that's a token. That's a remembrance of who your victim is. That's why he knew who his victims were, because he had their driver's license or an ID card. That's why he was able to identify them. But apparently on Scott's cases, they didn't have an ID on them. So that's why he didn't know who those victims are. And there's another one in Chicago. So we have 3 unidentified
4.
But now we only have 2, thanks to Scott.
No, there's still 4 out there.
No, there's 4 out there?
There's a Jasper County one. There's the other one of mine, Ford County, Illinois, and I believe you said Lake County, Illinois.
Yeah.
And were you able to ascertain the age of the one victim you identified?
Johnny?
Scott? Yeah.
He was born in 1964, so that would put him at what now?
80, 20, something, 60, 80, 25. Wow. So, I mean,
Yeah,
so there,
like that.
yeah. We're at about 35 minutes. Is there anything you guys would like to add?
Yeah, I want to say Free to Kill is available on audio as well as ebooks. And in 2019, I updated Free to Kill on the ebooks. So we have an update of that. So, you know, audible.com.
Right. So there's your book, Amazon, Kindle, audiobook, hardcover as well. So.
Yep. And we had professional actors do the reading. So we have people that do the characters. So it's interesting. And they have, you know, it's a gift that keeps on giving. As I told Annie Schwartz, every 3 months, I get a check from my books. So it's part of my will. I'm giving it to charity. So there you go.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Scott?
At this point, you know, I would urge as many people that are listening to get their DNA uploaded into one of the systems, because it may not these may not directly affect them, but yet it could be somebody that's related to them down the line. That, you know, that's how we solve these cases. A lot of people are afraid that the police are going to use this against them. If they don't have anything to hide, there's nothing they're going to use against you.
Right. I think that's how the orange whatever rapist here in California got caught, is through this kind of DNA analysis. Yeah. Yeah, really fascinating. Thanks for the update and everything. And I really appreciate both of you being here, Scott McCord and Gera-Lind Kolarik. And again, the title of the book, and look for the movie, is Free to Kill, The True Story of Serial Murderer Larry Eyler by Gera-Lind Kolarik. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Bill, when the movie comes out, we're going to have you do an interview with Roland Emmerich.
Awesome. I would love to. That'd be great. Keep me in mind.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Stay there. All right. That was